feeling is very clear. We believe this was a massive victory. Certainly, we wish this was a 9-0 decision because we firmly believe that the president was well within his constitutional authority, and the Supreme Court made that very clear last night, and they put Judge Boasberg in his place. We called on the Supreme Court to rein in these judges who are acting as judicial activists, not real arbiters of the truth and the law, and that's exactly what we saw the Supreme Court do yesterday. Christian.
Thanks, Caroline. Now that the president's reciprocal tariffs are here, going into effect tomorrow, what's the status of the ERS? When will they actually start collecting revenue? And will that be nested under CBP or somewhere else entirely?
It's something Secretary Lutnick has taken up, so I defer you to the Department of Commerce, but it's something that he and the president believe quite strongly in, and it's a promise that they intend to keep to the American people.
Real quickly, can you explain why the president opted to send Secretary Hegseth to the dignified transfer last week instead of attending himself?
Sure. The Secretary Hegseth was there to represent the administration. The president has expressed his condolences to these families, as have I from this podium. Shelby.
The president's trade representative this morning told senators that the president does not intend on carving out exemptions for products and companies when it comes to tariffs. But would the administration consider changing that stance should bankruptcies begin among U.S. companies who are dependent on China trade?
I won't get ahead of the president on any exemptions or his decision on that. I will leave that to him. But again, we're looking at this country by country and based on the needs of the American people and the American workforce.
Or can you walk us through how this specific tariff plan was decided on and which advisor came up with it?
The reciprocal tariff plan. It was a plan that was discussed by the president's entire trade team over the course of many, many meetings, and the president ultimately decided on which way to go. A few proposals were given to the president. There was debate and discussion, and the president made his decision, and as you've seen very publicly, the entire trade team is on board with this plan and the negotiations that will ensue because of it. Sure.
Caroline, on Iran, given what's going to be happening on Saturday, what exactly is the current administration doing to stop Iran's funding of terrorist aggression worldwide that the previous administration wasn't doing?
Well, first of all, when it comes to Saturday, I won't get ahead of the president. He has said there will be direct talks with Iran on Saturday. I won't further any details from this podium for obvious reasons, security reasons. It will, provide an update as we always have. However, when it comes to Iran, the president has reimposed crippling sanctions on the Iranian regime, and he's made it very clear to Iran they have a choice to make. You can strike a deal with the president, you can negotiate, or there will be hell to pay. And as the president said yesterday, if they don't choose to move forward with diplomacy and a deal, which is the direction we do see them headed in, there will be grave consequences to pay. The back row.
Thank you, Caroline. On the president's threat yesterday on social media to increase tariffs against China by an additional 50% in response to their retaliation, has he signed anything in terms of an executive order, any documentation around that? Will that additional 50% go into effect tomorrow?
They will be going into effect at 12:01 a.m. tonight, so effectively tomorrow, yes.
Work on that today?
Of course, as always. To the gentleman in front of you, because that's who I originally called on. Go ahead.
Over the weekend, President Trump said that he would be willing to have U.S. citizens deported to El Salvador with the cooperation of President Bukele. How would that work legally, and how many people would potentially be available for that operation?
So the president has discussed this idea quite a few times publicly. He's also discussed it privately. You're referring to the president's idea for American citizens to potentially be deported. These would be heinous, violent criminals who have broken our nation's laws repeatedly, and these are violent, repeat offenders in American streets. The president has said if it's legal, right? If there is a legal pathway to do that, he's not sure. We are not sure if there is. It's an idea that he has simply floated and has discussed very publicly as in the effort of transparency. Reagan.
Thank you, Caroline. There's been more reporting coming out now about President Biden's decline while in the White House. Is the White House considering releasing the audio of Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur to the public, which the former president had previously blocked?
I don't have an update on that, but I can certainly check. I think the American people would be quite interested to hear that tape, but I'll double check on the release of it. Thank you. Michael.
Thank you, Caroline. On Saturday, during meetings with Iran, President Trump says high-level officials will be meeting directly with Iranian officials. We're hearing some pushback from Iran now saying those talks will be indirect. Can you clarify?
They will be direct talks on Saturday, and I won't get ahead of the president on any further details. Jennifer.
Yeah, two things. On the Israel tariffs, can you give us an update on the discussion on relaxing those tariffs? And then I had another question about the Doge team after that.
That discussion is ongoing. I don't have any definitive details to iron out for you.
And then the president on Thursday told us that there was an incredible discovery that the Doge team had made. He called it horrible and incredible. Can you reveal that yet? Give us details on what it was about?
There has been a discovery. I hate to leave you hanging on a cliff, but I don't want to get ahead of the president on that. But I can confirm there has been a discovery. It's just not quite yet ready for release. Go ahead.
Caroline, thank you.
I was calling on the young lady behind you, but I'll come to you after, Ed.
All right.
Not discriminating here. Go ahead.
President's meeting today with House Republicans. Can you say who is in that meeting and his message to Republicans that are skeptical of the Senate-passed budget framework?
Sure. The president will be meeting with Republican lawmakers today here at the White House to talk to them about the framework that the Senate passed. The president was very quick to put out a statement about his support for the reconciliation package that the Senate passed, and he is counting on House Republicans to pass it. The Republicans received an overwhelming mandate from the American public to govern. We have an extraordinary opportunity. There are key promises that the president made to the American people in this bill: tax cuts, securing the border, deregulation, unleashing the might of American energy. These are good things for the American people. The president wants to see this get done, and that's why he's engaging with lawmakers today.
Just a quick follow-up on tariffs. Kevin Hassett said today that the administration is prioritizing talks with Japan and South Korea, other trading partners. Are there other countries on that list that you guys can name publicly that you're having serious discussions with?
Sure. As you have heard from various administration officials, myself included, there have been nearly 70 countries that have reached out to the administration last time I checked, but again, I hear the phones are ringing off the hook. There are foreign leaders who want to fly to Washington tonight and get on a plane to negotiate with this country, which shows you the leverage that the president is using. It shows you the rest of the world needs the United States of America to do business with. Israel, obviously, yesterday you heard a public statement from Prime Minister Netanyahu. The president has detailed his calls with the leaders of Japan, in South Korea. We are going to prioritize our allies and our partners around the world first when it comes to these negotiations, and the trade team will be divvying them up again to make tailor-made trade deals around the world. Ed, go ahead. As promised.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned the 70 countries or so. I'm curious, though, under what conditions at this point would President Trump talk to President Xi about tariffs?
Look, I just spoke to the president about this, and he believes that China wants to make a deal with the United States. He believes China has to make a deal with the United States. It was a mistake for China to retaliate. The president, when America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight. But the president believes that Xi and China want to make a deal. They just don't know how to get that started. And the president also wanted me to tell all of you that if China reaches out to make a deal, he'll be incredibly gracious, but he's going to do what's best for the American people.
So China has to call first?
The Chinese want to make a deal, they just don't know how to do it, but the president will be implementing these 104% tariffs on China tonight.
Under what conditions might he consider lowering tariffs on China at this point?
It would be imprudent of me to tell you those conditions here from the podium. Sure, Gabe.
Thanks, Caroline. With regards to the Supreme Court ruling on the Alien Enemies Act, you're right, it was a win for the administration, but the justices also said that deportees are entitled to due process. Does the administration agree with that?
That's not quite true, Gabe. They said that they are entitled to a habeas petition, and we are going to continue to comply with the law, and we are wholly confident that every single person that has been deported under the Alien Enemies Act, every person that will continue to be deported under the Alien Enemies Act qualifies for that deportation.
NBC News is reporting that the administration is considering drone strikes on drug cartels in Mexico. We're citing several officials. This morning, Mexico's president was asked about that, and she said that we reject any of those actions. Your response?
I saw that reporting. I don't want to confirm it from this podium. I don't want to comment on it because I'm not sure, but I would defer you to the National Security Council.
So you haven't confirmed the report, but with Mexico's president saying that she rejects any of that, what would your response be? How is the relationship then between Mexico's president and the White House right now over targeting drug cartels?
Well, first of all, the relationship between President Sheinbaum and President Trump is quite good, and I think both world leaders would tell you that. The president has been engaged directly with President Sheinbaum on a number of different topics, particularly when it comes to clamping down on the Mexican drug cartels, on clamping down on illegal immigration, human trafficking, drug trafficking through our southern border. She's taken significant steps towards doing that, but as for that specific report, again, I'm not going to comment.
Karoline, two questions on trade. First, as a part of these negotiations, is it possible for countries to lower their tariffs below that 10% bare minimum that's been set?
Again, I'll leave that to the president to make those determinations, but I can tell you that 10% universal baseline will go into effect as these negotiations are ongoing.
Got it. And then what is your thinking just as far as low labor cost countries? Like if you've got a country like Vietnam that wants to negotiate, but obviously they have some advantages in terms of trade, in terms of the people there are not paid as much as American citizens. What is kind of the thinking? Can they still achieve a good kind of trade outcome with the United States?
Well, again, you're right to point out that different countries have different labor markets. They have different skills, if you will, different resources, and the president is going to take all of that into account. His team will take all of that into account when they're negotiating these deals. I do just want to point out one thing, that the president, everybody in Washington, whether they want to admit it or not, knows that this president is right when it comes to tariffs and when it comes to trade. In fact, Democrats have long said that the United States of America has been ripped off by the countries around the world. They just don't want to admit it now because it's President Trump who is saying that. In June of 1996, Nancy Pelosi spoke on the House floor. She urged her colleagues at the time to fight against the status quo trade policies that had contributed to America's trade deficit with China. In fact, Nancy Pelosi said, "How far does China have to go? How much more repression? How big a trade deficit? How many jobs have to be lost for the American workers? How much dangerous proliferation has to exist before members of this House of Representatives will say, 'I will not endorse the status quo'?" Those are the words of Nancy Pelosi in 1996. Well, President Trump is finally answering her call 27 years later. Nancy Pelosi can thank President Trump today for the 104% retaliatory tariff that will be going into effect on China. In 2007, Chuck Schumer spoke of our nation's crippling trade deficit, saying, "These are the kinds of records the American people don't want us to be breaking. The administration needs to move beyond words, take action now to reverse a trend that threatens our prospects for future economic growth." And Chuck Schumer said that in 2007. Finally, in 2025, President Trump is taking action. Recently defeated Democrat Sherrod Brown said on deficits in 2012 that our deficit then at China had reached an all-time high, and it was on pace to exceed last year's record. The trade deficit had cost American workers millions of jobs at the time. These are the words of Democrats years ago. It is about time America finally has a president who is taking action to restore those millions of jobs back to the United States of America, to boost our manufacturing industry. He's doing what's right for the American people. It will take a lot of labor. It will take a lot of effort. That's exactly what the American people elected this president to do. He will be talking about our energy agenda at 3 o'clock today. Over in the East Room, as you all know, he will be signing a bill to unleash the might of our beautiful, clean coal industry in this country, which is a reliable energy source also for AI. There's a great story in Bloomberg today, actually, about the executive order that will be signed later. So we'll see you all there. I'll let the president speak more. See you later. Thanks, guys.